Steve, you're playing with your phone. So it's like the Sunday ritual, Steve charging his phone. So anyway, I titled today, Hamster Wheel, Friend or Foe. And I kind of put a little blurb, if you read the blurb on the Sunday announcement, it kind of was like, I was thinking of my day, and I gave it to you in short form, but my day's the same day. Pretty much Monday, or actually Sunday through Thursdays, pretty much the same thing. I get up, I get ready, I walk the dog, I go to work, I delete the spam mail, I do some office work, I walk the dog, I finish the office work, delete more spam, go home, walk the dog, eat, go to bed. You know, it is literally like, it's funny because sometimes people say, well, what are you going to be doing this afternoon? I'm like, I can almost tell you exactly what I'll be doing 5 days a week because it's the same routine over and over and over. I thought it's very hamster wheelish, you know. I think Fridays and Saturdays are my only days that I'm like, yeah, who knows what I'll be doing, you know. It's a little more loosey-goosey, but the rest of it's very repetitive. And I've been thinking a lot recently about how I spend my time. Where am I devoting my energy? And one of the things that brought this up is just I've been really tired. And so I ended up seeing a sleep specialist, and they said, I just got the results this week, yay! They said, well, nothing's wrong with you. Which I was glad, because they were like, there's a history of sleep apnea in my family. They said, you know, and it was fine. The biggest issue they came up with, they said, you're spending too much time in bed. And so you're tired. And I was like, I'm tired because I'm resting too much. You know, and it had gotten to be one of those ones where I was like, well, I'm tired, so I would stay in bed, but then because I was staying in bed, it was making me more tired. And it was becoming this, you know, loop. And so I've been really looking at like, well, what am I spending my time on, and where do I want to spend my time? And I read this quote, and I'm going to summarize it, but it was from Randy Zuckerberg. You go, well, wait, I recognize Zuckerberg. Who's Zuckerberg? Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah.
It's Facebook. This is his sister. And she actually worked at Facebook. She was one of the big leaders in it. And she said, here's the entrepreneurial's challenge. And think about this one, the entrepreneurial's challenge. She said there's 5 things you have in life. Work, sleep, family, fitness, or friends. Work, sleep, family, fitness, friends. And she said the entrepreneurial challenge is you can pick 3. Think about it. And I thought, well, what is that true? And I started thinking, well, what happens? If I spend my time sleeping and working, and then I spend my time at the gym, guess what happens? I don't see my friends or my family. If I spend time with friends and family, I'm probably not getting my sleep, or I'm not getting to the gym. And so she put forth this idea that even though she said there's 5 major life areas, I would add spiritual practice, maybe number 6, that it's very challenging for us to adequately and successfully manage all 5 of those areas of our life at any given time. That usually if we prefer one, the other suffers. And so I started looking at the course. I was like, what's the course say about time management? Because I'm obviously not doing too good because I'm tired, I'm sleeping all the time, and it isn't working. She's saying get to pick 3, and I'm like, well, I don't want to lose any of those 5. You know, I like all 5 of them. So I looked, and there's actually a section of the course that said, how should the teacher of God spend their day? Which is where the reading came from today. How should the teacher of God spend their day? Now I'll say, I'm going to qualify this. For some people say, well, time's an illusion. You know, I don't have to worry about it. And it says, you know, it starts off, I love the course because it's realistic. It said to start off with, yes, that's true. For the advanced teacher, there's no issue of time. But for the rest of you all, is basically what it says. This is for the rest of you who ain't got it yet, here's what we're going to tell you. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to put myself in the rest of y'all, because I know that my time management is not great. I can't get all 5 of those really well. And so I said, what's it say? And it's interesting because first of all, it talks about routines, and it gives us the little qualifier to start. It says routines as such are dangerous because they easily become gods in their own right, threatening the very goals for which they were set up. I've done this. I've totally done this. For a while, I had literally, it was about a 2 to 2.5 hour morning routine. It was a combination of Ayurvedic practices, my regular spiritual practice, Course in Miracles, and a couple other things that I've learned. So it was literally like I would get up, and the Ayurvedic practices are more physical related. So it was like you got up, you had to brush your teeth, you had to rinse your face, you had to go to the restroom. This was all in specific order. You then had to do a full body massage before you showered. It felt great, but then it was like, oh, and then you need to go do your meditation practice. And I had my sage, and I had my drum that I use, and then I had 3 different meditations I would listen to. It took 2.5 hours minimum for me to get through my routine in the morning. And guess what happened? I started getting stressed out about the routine. I started like, oh my gosh, I gotta get up early, and now I'm tired because I got up early, but if I don't get up early, I can't get everything done. And I forgot the purpose of it. The purpose of it was to give me a good start to my morning. So this section about what should we do with our day starts off with, don't get so tied up in your routines. And it does actually, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but it does actually qualify too that it says, this is really addressed to people who have already worked on their spiritual practice. And I'm going to take the heart of the course here, rather than word for word. It says word for word, you have to have gone through the workbook first, before you get to play with your own morning routine at all, basically. That's what it says. It says, you do the workbook first, then talk to me. That's what it says. I'm going to take that and I'm going to step back a little bit, because some of us maybe haven't gone through the whole workbook yet, but we have spent time in our spiritual practice. And I think the heart of this is saying, this isn't necessarily for the person who's just starting their spiritual practice, but it's for the person who has developed a sensitivity to guidance from spirit. Now, it's really practical in talking about our morning routines. Because what's interesting, a lot of times when we hear the Course say, we're saving time. And we're going to save time. The teachers of God save time. It talks about what? Thousands and thousands of years. Let's be honest, how many of us conceive or even deal with thousands and thousands of years in a real conscious, understanding way? I'm like good if I can deal with thousands and thousands of seconds, not thousands and thousands of years. This section isn't about saving time in the years. It's talking about saving time today. It's talking about saving time today. And it very simply says, we can safely say time devoted to starting the day right does indeed save time. It's always possible to begin again should the day begin with error. Yet, there are obvious advantages in terms of saving time if the need for this can be avoided. Simply put, get it right the first time. It's practical. It's saying, if you start your day off badly in the morning and you have to go back and redo stuff, I'll say as a female, maybe I say some of the guys might relate, but maybe not so much others. I'd always get my makeup done in the morning. I don't always get it done, right? And then I'm trying to do it in a rush, and then when I get to the office, I'm like, I look like crap. And I gotta go back and do it again. So that's what this is talking about. When it's talking saving time, it's talking about just get it right to start. Get your morning right to start. And it says, it doesn't have to be a specific time. It says duration doesn't have to be how long do you spend in your morning practice. It says one can easily sit still an hour with closed eyes and accomplish nothing. I'll tell you, I did a 10-day, it was about 11 and a half days, because when they say 10-day silent retreat, it's 10 days of silence, plus your start and end days. 10 days, couldn't speak, couldn't talk. Probably more interesting experiences I'll never do again. But we spent, I want to say about 8 to 10 hours a day in meditation was the goal. We had periods where we had to be in the meditation hall. I'll tell you, I slept more that week than I've ever slept before. And we would sit 2 hours straight. We weren't supposed to move. After the 3rd day, it wasn't only just meditation, it was you were not to move. You weren't to wiggle a finger, you weren't to wiggle a toe. And it's like, oh, how spiritual. We spent 10 hours of meditation. And guess what? I'll tell you, a lot of the times, like partway through, I was like, oh, wait, okay, I'm still awake, and I'm trying not to move, but at the same time, my head's bobbing up and down. And so this says, it doesn't matter how much time you spend in your morning, but spend enough. And it says, it's interesting, it says, go, take your quiet time, continuing a minute or two after you begin to find it difficult. In other words, don't give up the moment the challenge arises. You might be starting your morning practice and saying, okay, I've done this. I sit down for meditation, the first second, my mind's wandering. And the Course says, wait, don't give up yet. Go a minute or two more, and you might find that the difficulty will diminish and drop away. And if it drops away, then what? You continue with whatever you're doing for your practice. But on the flip side, if you're still having difficulty, that's the time to stop. So it's really nice because I've got all the little timers on my phone for all my meditation timers. One's 15 minutes, one's 30 minutes. And it says, give up the timers. Give up the timers. Be open to work past the discomfort. Be open to sit even when it gets uncomfortable. But if you get to the point and you've sat with it and you're still like, this isn't working today, you get up and you move on. But you've now dedicated at least part of your morning to God. And it says the same procedure should be followed at night. This makes me laugh because the Course is so practical. It says, just before going to sleep is a desirable time to devote to God. It sets your mind into a pattern of rest and orients you away from fear. That sounds great, right? Mm-hmm. Here comes the practical part. It's wise not to lie down for it. Because what do we all do when we lie down? We're out. We're asleep. I've got one meditation I specifically listen to because it puts me asleep every time. The ironic thing, it's Jacob Glass, who swears like a sailor, worse than a sailor, except for in his meditations. Puts me asleep. Every time I lay down with his meditations, I'm out. So it says, take some time with God. Take the time in the morning, take some time in the evening, get it right, but don't push beyond what is beneficial. Be open to hear what Spirit wants for you. Now, like I said, it's interesting. This specifically actually says you really can't call yourself a teacher of God until you've done the structured periods of the workbook. Now, I think the heart of that is, it's saying, if you're just really consciously starting your spiritual practice, don't try to go willy-nilly and doing your own thing. Get some discipline, get some practice, find what works for you. When you're more open to that, then it says this must depend, what should be part of your morning practice? This must depend on the teacher of God himself. After completion of the more structured practice periods from the workbook, individual need becomes the chief consideration. Individual need becomes the chief consideration. So in other words, what supports you in going with your day and having a day dedicated to God that you can do in the morning? It may be, for some people, it's 1 or 2 minutes. For some people, it may be longer. I looked at some of the different practices. Course in Miracles, the workbook practices, what are some of the things they do? Observing and considering what you see. What's the first part of the workbook? That face on the wall means nothing. That picture over there means nothing. That flower means nothing. It might be that your practice is just observing around you and seeing what you're visualizing within your space. Sometimes the Course talks about watching your own thoughts. Just observing, noticing the thoughts go by. Buddhist tradition calls that mindfulness. Just sitting and observing. What are the crazy things that go through your head? Recognizing you're not your thoughts and recognizing they just kind of drift in and out. Don't have to listen to that craziness, right? Don't have to listen to those crazy voices in our head. Sometimes the Course works with mantras. It'll say, repeat this phrase while you sit. Contemplate this specific phrase while you sit. Maybe you just sit in quietness. There's times when the Course just says, sit quietly for 30 minutes and just sink into the experience of feeling one with God. Maybe, sometimes it'll just be like today's was, even though we did it differently, it's, sometimes it's just reviewing a past lesson. Saying, well, gee, I've been reading this one lesson and it seems to struggle with me. Maybe I just ponder this one lesson. Go back and review it. Other spiritual practices include a lot of different things. And I'll say, I feel, and I've said this before, is you have to see, and I think it's here too, what works for you. I'll say I love the Ayurvedic traditions. It's too much for me to do every day. It's too much. I think it's like 10 steps total for your morning. And it includes everything from oil pulling between your teeth, brushing, not just bathing, but you have to splash your face before you do all the other stuff. It gets too much. But I will say for me, the self-massage and going through and just rubbing my body down before I start my shower is great. I get a lot of energy from it. And it gives me a chance to be grateful for the things I've got. It gives me a chance to sit down and become centered. I like reading the lessons. I still read the lessons. Now, some of them, there are 4 pages long. I might read the first part, and I might read the part at the end. I might skip pages 2 and 3. The question is what supports you? And I do other stuff too. I mean, I've done silent meditation, this and that. But the purpose is to move forward throughout your day. How am I going to work with my day? How am I going to avoid having to start again? I'm going to incorporate these. That says, the objective of the morning routine, so I call this, it says there's one thought in particular that should be remembered throughout the day. So you're starting off your day so that you can remember this thought. And what is that thought? It's of pure joy, a thought of peace, a thought of limitless release. Limitless because all things are freed within it. We're not sitting down to do a morning practice for the sake of doing a morning practice. I've known people who boast about it. I went on, it was a singles dating site, but it was a spiritual singles dating site. And I was like, okay, who's into Course in Miracles, right? Typed in Course in Miracles. This one guy comes up, he seems somewhat interesting, messaged him. He comes back and says, so you know, for the last 10 years, I've not only done the lessons every day, but every hour I give 5 minutes of my time to God.
Wow.
Which sounds great, but I'm like, either A, the guy doesn't do anything, or B, even if he does do stuff, he has made this such a ritual to be able to say, I have not missed a single day in 5 years. Every hour I sit down and I hang out for 5 minutes with God, which is awesome if he really is hanging out with God. When he's making it part of his, hi, let's get to know each other so we can date, didn't feel real spiritual to me. It felt like it was ritual. And so the goal isn't to go into that. The goal is that throughout the day, I have a thought of joy, of peace, of limitless release. And where does that release come from? It says, how simply and how easily does the day slip by for the teacher of God who has accepted his protection? For he is safe and he knows it to be so. That's part of our morning ritual, is to understand that we are safe in God. We are safe in God. So when I do my morning ritual, whatever it isn't for the sake of, I can flirt by saying how many times I've done my meditation. It's saying, I'm sitting because I want to know that God is. I love it. The Course says you can just say the words God is, and then we don't really have to say anything else. Which is funny because I'm saying that in the middle of a 20-minute talk. But can we incorporate that? Can we understand that we have a guide who will not fail? He need make no distinction among the problem he receives, for he to whom he turns, there's a lot of he's in here, we'll excuse them for that, with all of them recognizes no order of difficulty in resolving them. He is as safe as in the present as he was before illusions were accepted into his mind, and as he will be when he has let them go. What's that mean? We're as safe as we've been in all eternity. We're as safe now as we are when we are in heaven. We are wholly safe. And so we try to do this practice. We set up an intention. We say, I'm going to give my first part of my morning to God. I'm going to commit to whatever I'm guided to do. I'm going to allow myself a little discomfort. I'm going to allow myself to sit beyond that minute or two when maybe distraction arises, when maybe I've got thoughts of my to-do list, when maybe I'm just thinking, man, I just woke up and my foot's cramped up. Maybe it's, whatever. Maybe it's the San Francisco, maybe it's the oh my goodness, it's just cold and foggy in my apartment right now. You know, whatever that is, we give ourselves, we say, I'm going to commit to going past that mirror to discomfort so that I can practice whatever I'm led to do, so that I know the peace of God throughout the day, so that I know I am safe, so that I know I don't have to worry, that I am as I was in heaven. That I am, as the lesson today, the heading of the lesson today, said, I am not a body, I'm free. For I am as God created me. It says, there is no substitute for the will of God. In simple statement, it is to this fact that the teacher of God devotes his day. Perhaps he needs to remember, God is with me, I cannot be deceived. Perhaps he prefers other words, or only one or none at all. Use what works for you. He merely chooses to give up all that he never had, and for this sacrifice is heaven restored to his awareness. So we sacrifice our few minutes that we never really actually were ours, so that we can become aware of heaven throughout our day. So I'm trying to get back to my morning routine. I hope you will too. Thank you.
Thank you.